The next contemporary issue within football is gender. There are various issues to do with gender within football. Firstly, there are traditional norms and stereotypes within the history of the sport. The expectation of what females and males should look and act like. It is suggested that boys should be tough, play contact sports, so look muscular, so play football, play rugby, whereas in contrast, girls should be not muscular and do a bit more fragile sports such as dance or gymnastics. Also, there are stereotypical phrases that demean each gender, so such as don't throw like a girl and stop being a big girl's blouse. And in addition, there can be labels attached to if you like certain sports. For instance, girls get labelled a tomboy if they predominantly like sports where there is a high participation number of males. It took several years for women's participation within sport to increase, and this wasn't just down to physical stereotypes, but also social stereotypes. Women were believed to have household jobs and look after the children. They probably didn't have time to do sports. However, this has evolved as more and more women are taking part in different sports and being recognised for it. But in a Actives People survey, it says that males typically chose to be more active than females. So this stereotype is still about sometimes, but it can definitely be seen within football due to the gender pay gap and sexism and discrimination that I'll explain in more detail later. So where do stereotypes come from? So in the modern day, they come from different forms of media, and how much men's football is promoted over women's just adds to the stereotype. The volume in which the media displays the men's game compared to the women's game is different, and this just adds to the level of stereotypes that come about as people maybe haven't become familiar with women being involved in the sport. They don't understand that the times are sort of changing and that women can play the sport because it's just been a predominantly male sport for so long. So by not promoting the sport, not having media coverage, then this just adds to people's almost confusion of why women are sort of playing the game. However, people's upbringings can influence their views on sports. So parents can encourage their children to take part in various sports. So socialisation means that the parents can shape the child's sporting ability to what they like, therefore can have an impact on what stereotypes they believe. In addition, dependent on who is advertised as a role model can influence people to play the sports. So young girls and boys typically look up to the people that are the same gender as them. Therefore, if the media evenly display positive female and male role models within football, then maybe the increase into how many girls and boys play the football will increase. Sexism and discrimination are very noticeable within the women's game, and this can be seen on and off the pitch, although it has got better over the past few years. But, for example, the treatment of a female linesman was appalling after she made the wrong decision in a match. She got slated in the media. However, male linesmen make the wrong decision all the time and no one really cares. There are many occasions when before VAR got brought in where they've made the wrong decision, but no one has really made a big deal of it. It could be suggested that maybe certain people think that females within football have an ignorance. They don't really know what they're doing, as typically they've never played the sport, and it's just been males participating throughout the years. So because of this, because they're new to the sport, maybe they don't really know what they're doing. In addition to this, sexism within football was really noticeable in 1921, as when the men went off to the war, females used to play football. They set up a league, there was matches. However, in 1921, the FA banned women from playing football, as they thought it was quite unsuitable for females and ought to not be encouraged. And several doctors agreed that the sport posed a serious physical risk to women. So the history of women's participation in football has obviously been less than men, which adds to obviously the stereotype. There is a physical difference between men and women. There's no denying that. There is a physiological difference between how men and women look. But I don't think they should be treated any differently when playing the same sport. So discrimination can be seen in the 2015 World Cup as a discrimination lawsuit against FIFA and the Canadian Soccer Association was put forward by various athletes due to the fact that matches would be played on artificial surfaces rather than grass like in the men's game. But the lawsuit was withdrawn, which just highlights the inequality of how female football players are treated compared to men. Obviously, the gender pay gap is a huge gender issue within football, such as the World Cup prize money and then obviously salaries are completely different for the men and women. So in the women's game, they don't have many sponsorship deals, which means that less money is put into the women's game to help it grow. Rather than the men, they have lots of sponsorship deals, so more money is put into that, and it's just a continuous cycle. So that's why the men's game has grown more than the women, even though this is changing now due to the success of the Lionesses at both World Cups in recent years. There has been change due to the role models that have grown in the women's and men's game, but to resolve all aspects of this gender issue, the governing bodies such as FIFA and the FA need to do more to make it equal and fair, so that both the men and women's game get the right media coverage, but also the right equipment so that they can train and be full-time athletes so that they can play to the best of their ability and reduce the gender issue within football.